Hi guys, welcome back. This is Samara from coachingconsciouscreators.com, and you've reached the channel where you can get immediately actionable tips on how to create the life that you desire. So I got a little bit of feedback on the video I did in celebration of Valentine's Day and all things love, and I talked a lot about the need for validation in that video, and I wanted to clarify a point. So what we need in every relationship that we have is validation, and that is not wrong. That is a valid need. I had a conversation with a friend about it today, and I came up with an analogy that I want to share with you guys. So we are born with the need to eat, right? Our bodies are designed to need nourishment, and they're built to process food and deliver it to where it needs to go in our bodies. In the same way, we are emotionally designed for connection and validation and to be acknowledged by those that we're in relationship with. So those desires that we have to be seen, to be understood, to get the acknowledgement that we matter and that how we feel and what we think is important, all of that is natural. Like, it's a part of this experience on the planet. We came from the all. The all was perfection, and it wanted to experience itself, and so it broke into all these different forms of duality: the male, the female, the light, the dark, all of that, with the intent to bring it all together and see how it interacts with itself. And so when we have these needs or these desires for connections with other people, those are natural things, natural and healthy things, and we should be trying to get those validation needs met. The problem comes in, similar to the way it comes in with eating, is that in today's society, this is going to sound really bad, but it'll help you get the point. There's a lot of junk food out there. So we need to eat, right? And ideally, we would be eating foods that are full of nutrients and give us energy and treat our bodies well. But it's easier these days to go to McDonald's or Burger King or grab a pizza. It tastes better in the moment, but we pay for it later, right? If we're constantly eating junk food, then we're destroying our bodies, and the evidence of that comes when we get ill. Same thing with relationships, right? Ideally, we would want to have connections with healthy people who validate us in healthy ways, who give us the love and the support and the acknowledgement that we need. But in today's society, there's a lot of junk relationships out there. I mean, there's a lot of people who are toxic and bad for you. And, toxicity, you can always find a root cause. Most people who are toxic were abused. We understand that, but it's our responsibility in this reality to address that and to resolve it. All of us come here needing to resolve issues that we pick up when we're young. Anyway, my point is, there's a lot of junk relationships out there. And when you're trying to get your needs met through these junk relationships, similar to when you're trying to get your food needs met with junk food, you end up sick mentally, emotionally, and even physically eventually. But that doesn't mean that your need for validation and acknowledgement is wrong. It just means that you're going to the wrong source of emotional support and energy. Just like, just because you're overweight or unhealthy doesn't mean that your need to eat is wrong. It just means that you need to eat something else. You need to go and eat some vegetables and some fruit and, something healthy. And similarly in relationships, you need to seek out healthy connections. Like, that is important. I know there's this attitude out there that you should be self-sufficient. You shouldn't need any friends. You shouldn't need anybody else. You should be able to meet your own validation needs. And truthfully, in some cases, you'll be forced to do that. But that should not be the goal. That should not be the ideal. That's like, those, and the analogy I used with my friend earlier was about how if there was an apocalypse and we didn't have access to food, we've got all these people selling these rations that can last for decades. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that is what it's like to try and provide your own validation all the time, to try to meet your own emotional needs all the time. That's like, yeah, you can do it, but it's like eating those prepackaged foods. It's like, okay, I have to do this because I don't have any other options. But the truth is, we are built for connections with actual other people. honestly, they're the only way that we grow, because when we move into this space of isolation and saying we don't need to connect with anybody, I can do it on my own, then we lose all opportunity for growth. We lose the opportunity to see ourselves reflected in others and grow. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we are to ourselves emotionally, if we choose not to rely on anyone for validation, then we can get stuck in this bubble. And I've seen it happen over and over again, especially with people who consider themselves very spiritual. They will get into this space where they say, I'm unbothered. And it's because they don't have any connections. Like, they don't have anything reflecting back to them the ways in which that they can grow, or the ways in which they can serve others or improve at serving others. And so the ideal is not to be completely self-sufficient emotionally, to not connect with anyone. The ideal is to have healthy, loving connections. So if we look back at that analogy, the ideal is to eat healthy fruits and vegetables. Sometimes we expose ourselves to too much junk. Like, we expose ourselves to too much junk food and we start to get sick. Sometimes we expose ourselves to too many junk relationships. We leave ourselves open for those things to poison our minds and our hearts. And sometimes we get desperate. Sometimes we don't have very many options, and we have to, rely on whatever we can, whether it's, and the ways in which we receive validation don't necessarily have to be with a human being that we actually know. A lot of times when I was going through dark periods, my validation and emotional connection came through watching other people who had been through what I had been through on YouTube, or listening to podcasts. But I was still reaching out to try and get some sort of reflection on how I was being and who I was being, and that validation that, it mattered that I existed. And I was able to get that when I didn't have any other options, from people who create content, which is one of the reasons I create content, because I know sometimes people get stuck in situations and places in their lives where it's all they have, but it's not the ideal. Getting your validation needs met through content creators and alternative methods, and even, meditation and going into your higher self. All of that is still better than junk relationships, right? So there's the ideal healthy relationships, and then there's the, I don't have anybody in my life who can do that for me right now, so I've got to do what I got to do. Both of those are better than the alternative junk relationships, or junk food. Emotional junk food is what I'll start to call that. So I'm saying all this to say that having needs for validation, wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard, wanting to be understood, is part of your human experience, and it's not wrong. What could be wrong is the way that you go about meeting that need. Don't go to junk relationships. If you're in a position where you're cleansing, where you're moving away from some of those relationships, rely on whatever you can: books, content creators, anybody, support groups, online forums, before you go to junk relationships. But ideally, your goal should be to, after you go through that period where you're cleansing, seek out healthy connections. Healthy connections should be the goal. Your needs are valid and important. Just because you're unhealthy doesn't mean you shouldn't eat. Just because you've been engaged emotionally in toxic situations doesn't mean you don't need relationships. It just means that you have to change your diet. You have to get rid of the junk relationships and replace them with soul healing and fulfilling ones. So I hope this was helpful, guys. Comment below if you could relate, and like and subscribe and share if you want to see more. And I'd like to say welcome, I should have said that at the beginning, to all my new subscribers, and thank you to those of you who have subscribed on coachingconsciouscreators.com. I'm looking at ways to produce content exclusively for people who subscribe on the website, more impromptu videos, maybe some vlogging, something like that. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you soon.